This channel is for educational purposes only. Make sure you do your own due diligence before making any investments. And there is inherent risk in trading, so it's speculative. Just make sure you keep that in mind. Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro. I'm going to stick with the theme of ADX for one more time here. I'm going to mix it up. I have a few other things I want to talk about breakouts next time, but one of the things about ADX is it gives you the ability to identify when not only when you have divergence in place that could cause a minor pullback, but also when you get a specific type of divergence in ADX, you can look for something more significant, more of like a reversal pattern. And so I want to just make sure I go over this again. I went over this back in February because when the market peaked on the hourly chart, this pattern developed, and we were able to really put on a nice hedge and buy some puts against the market, planning for it to go down based on this specific signal that developed on the hourly. So I'm going to give you another example of that today off a daily chart, but I think it's a valuable thing to look for if you're constantly looking at ADX. So we're going to go to this example. This is a Garmin, GRMN, and I've got two different incidences that I'm looking at. One is on the left side where it's at a bottom, and another time just recently this year when it was at a top. And so again, I want you to be able to understand and look for this specific pattern when it develops and recognize, especially if you're long a stock that has been making higher highs and higher lows, and you're looking for a real sign of weakness. What I'm going to show you today, I think, can be a huge advantage in terms of an exit strategy. So let's just start, though, at the bottom and during this sell-off. And what I've done down at the bottom, I want to make sure you understand this key point, because the blue line is the ADX line. The red line represents the strength of the sellers. That's the negative DI. The green line represents the strength of the buyers, and that's the positive DI. And if you notice, I've labeled these peaks because each one of these rallies and then pull back and then another peak, and then you had a correction and then another peak here, and then you pulled back and then another peak here. And so I wanted to just make sure you understand that each peak, you have to decipher whether it was the sellers that caused the peak, which would be a negative peak here, or did the buyers cause the peak, where green is on top, and that would be considered a positive peak. And you want to make sure you know that, because you need to understand this if you're going to look for divergences. And if you're comparing negative peaks to positive peaks, you really don't have divergence in place. So you need to understand this. And this is a key factor, I think, in how to use ADX anyway. So you want to understand, and the reason why I like to use an 8 ADX, or it would be called like the smoothing in the settings, I use an 8 for that because I want to see more peaks and valleys. I want to see and be able to compare these peaks more often. The 14 is a more smooth line. You won't get as many peaks and valleys, and it's harder to compare. So it's a pretty nice advantage to be able to have this. I'm going to compare this low here in price to this low in price. And if you notice, you made a lower low, and if we look at this negative peak, this ADX compared to that bottom, that was a strong negative peak. And then we had a little minor rally, that was a positive peak. And then on this decline, where we went down and went to a new low in price, this peak could not get over 25. I've drawn a 25 line going across. And if you make a negative peak when you're declining, if you make a negative peak below 25, you should be on the lookout for a reversal pattern, as opposed to like if I just get a MACD divergence signal. A lot of times I'm just looking for a reversion back into resistance, and that's it. I'm not looking for any kind of a trend reversal necessarily. But if I get this type of a pattern on the ADX after a trending move, I am looking for not only a reversion trade, but also the potential for something more significant, like a reversal of the trend. So that is really why I find this to be very advantageous to be able to use ADX this way, as opposed to looking at something like RSI or MACD. Those can provide decent trading signals, What this does is it provides a little bit more significant reversal. By the way, if you're interested in getting more information on this type of stuff, a little bit more detailed ADX, MACD trading information using multiple timeframes, hit that subscribe button for me, and then let's go ahead and move on to the next divergence. And again, I call this divergence, but it's really something more significant because most of the time when you're looking at divergence, you're only looking for a reversion back to support. You're only getting a little pullback, and it can be a really good short-term trade. But this type of pattern where you've been trending to the upside and you get a really nice positive peak here, I didn't label that one, and then you get another positive peak here, and that one has been labeled. And then you go through a decline or a correction phase. It's really more of a sideways correction. And then if you notice, we made a new peak right here. And when that peaked, the ADX only got up to 25. It didn't make it above this black line going across. That is a huge warning sign to be on the lookout for a reversal pattern. Now, I do recognize it made one more push to the upside before reversing, but we got a second negative, or I should say positive peak well below 25. Very, very weak. That only got up to about 15, and then you really want to be on the lookout for a reversal. And so a reversal for me would typically be a key trend line or a break of the key moving averages. And you know, if I were sucked out of this trade here, just under 100, based on this divergence here, I wouldn't have had a problem seeing this go up again, because again, the decline after was pretty significant. So you need to go back to my earlier video on the market, and it was really right around late February, something like that. It'll show you how I did this on an intraday basis. And provided great protection against our portfolio when the market was getting ready to really get hammered. But if you can do this on your individual holdings, I think it's going to add a tremendous amount of value and get you out before you get any real serious sell-off or anything like that. So a great thing to be on the lookout for in terms of using ADX for reversal patterns. So please hit that like button, and we'll see you next time.